Right into the vortex. I'm Gemini Brett of More Than Astrology. I'm really stoked to be here. Thank you so much for coming. It's really a great honor to be here with Gary Caton. He's a teacher and a friend, a coach and a colleague and a collaborator in many things, and it's Gary's solar return, which is what we call a birthday. It is this weekend, so extra special that he's here in Sedona skies, spending time with me. This is from a photo shoot that we were on late night a few nights ago, and what a treat to be here in the dark sky city. It's beautiful. Sedona, thank you for having us. It is a first, I think, where I get to use one of my own slides instead of finding one online. And that being said, deep bow to the many artists that have contributed to this slideshow, perhaps without their knowing. If you find me, I would love to trade astrology. And deep bow to artists all around, artists of life. We are all creators of life. Yeah? And I'm excited to share my creations with you today. This is Bell Rock, as you all know, and the Galactic Center rising right on that peak. Now, from where I was standing, every day the winter solstice sun, actually I should say every year the winter solstice sun will find its way to that place, but only for a short period of time every 26,000 years will the Galactic Center rise on that peak. And that's mostly what I'm here to share today. They say that astrology really is two things: astronomy and correspondences. And many have lost the astronomical portion. And Gary and I are very tuned into an embodied, practical experience with the cosmos. That's where we find, at least, we receive our original thought and things that aren't in the books. So many astrologers now, because we can, and the movements have been tracked, we can look down and we can follow these rules and this language, but there's something about getting out there physically and experiencing. So it's been said that astronomy, the tracking of the planets and stuff, is this cold glove, and astrology or correspondences, how they interact with each other and with Earth and with us, is the living hand that wears it. I like to say also that mythology is the blood that pumps through that hand's veins. So I'm going to focus on the glove and the blood, the astronomy, cosmology, mythology, and Gary will bring us into the astrological. All right, so the Galactic Center rising on Bell Rock. Is this a sign? And God said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons." What kind of sign are we told to expect with this thing by the Hollywood moguls? Yeah. "We were warned, your cities will crumble and your idols as well. Not even the monks will make it through. The tidal wave is coming." And I wonder if you've experienced this tidal wave in some way. It didn't play out like the movie theaters might have suggested it was going to. But I know myself, I found astrology in 2012. My life changed incredibly, an amazing death and rebirth. And I'm still there, and I think we're feeling this awakening happening in this world, this great shift. And it's confusing, and it can be isolating when it's your turn. And perhaps the world, which just seems so damn crazy, is going through some of these labor pains for a new beauty to be born. May it be so. May we surf away from Jaws before the wave catches us. So when the tidal wave comes around, the fun thing to do is surf. Not even the capital would be left behind. I love this. 2012, November. That's not what I was told. Alright, so here's the Capitol building and the USS John F. Kennedy taking out the Washington Monument. And, the Capitol feels pretty cold these days. And it's amazing because inside this building and in this city in general, there are amazing esoteric teachings. This is the oldest statue inside the Capitol building. It's called the Car of History. This is Cleo, Muse of Time. We'll get back to that. This, in the next room under the rotunda, is George Washington looking up at himself, surrounded by 72 stars and many of the guides and goddesses, becoming a god himself, the apotheosis of Washington, sitting on the rainbow. What a trip. This is in the frieze, just below that, in the U.S. Capitol building, and it's been there for a long time. What's going on? The Mayan calendar, right? Wrong. That's the Aztec calendar, yeah, the Mexica calendar, the sunstone, though it's really promoted to us as if that was the Mayan calendar. Maya, and there are many. Aztec. Oreo. And actually, the Oreo carries many occult teachings. How about the Iron Cross? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And the chalice, the papal cross, 29, maybe 30, maybe 29 and a half dots on the Oreo cookie amidst the 12 dashes. The gematria for the Oreo is 185, the same as smoke, the same as Melchizedek, the same as eons, which I'm fascinated by, but I think maybe we're getting a little out, so let's rewind a little bit. In the beginning, in the very beginning, before the beginning, there was nothing but chaos. Endless darkness, the vast seas. But from those seas rose the light, Amun-Ra, who brought forth land, the Ben-Ben stone, and brought forth company, Tefnut and Shu, who are moisture and air. And together they rule. And Tefnut and Shu had a great love. These twins gave birth to another crew, another set of twins, known as Jeb and Nut, who also had a great fondness for one another. But it was not allowed to be, for they had jobs to do. He was Father Earth, you see, and she was Mother Sky. So she always arched above him. They longed for one another, but it was not to be. They were cursed to be separated for all days of the calendar year. Thoth, thrice great, heard their pain. And he sought to help them. So he challenged the moon itself at game after game of Senate. And he won again and again and again. And for his winnings, he demanded that the moon increase its brilliance. And it did, and it shined so brightly that 5 more days of light came our way. The old calendar was 360 days. So on these 5 extra days, Jeb and Nut are allowed to come together in this embrace, this marriage of heaven and earth, which has been celebrated in so many ways. Karnak in Egypt, the summer solstice alignment, the equinox serpent at the great pyramid of Kukulkan in Chichen Itza, summer solstice at Stonehenge, America's Stonehenge, New Hampshire, Mystery Hill, and equinox alignment. Not far away in Ohio, the great Serpent Mound. Many alignments of the sun and the moon, Chaco Canyon right here, yeah. Many sacred alignments. And here as well, believe it or not, temple in stone, the great Newgrange Passage grave, which aligns to the light of the sun only on one day, the birthday of the sun, December solstice, winter solstice. In the northern hemisphere, the light tracks all the way down the passage grave, illuminating the triple spiral at the back. What is this alignment to the birth of the sun? Winter solstice, when light is born again from the longest night, the birth of the sun. When the goats of Capricorn begin to climb this mountain from the lowest height on their way to summer, when we see the glory of the sun. The birth, right, back to Thoth. So Thoth, with the help of Moon, created these 5 extra days so Jeb and Nut could come together, this marriage of heaven and earth. And they birthed sons and daughters, twins, which reminds me of the Gemini tales. Sion, the eldest Set, Isis, queen of heaven, with Osiris, her king, Nephthys, her sister. Everyone loved this king and queen, Osiris and Isis, who brought us everything we know about being human in our day. Well, everyone loved them but Set, who was jealous, for he felt as the eldest Isis should be his. Isis warned Osiris not to invite Set to his solar return party. But he did, brotherly love, And Set brought a beautiful gift, this ornate sarcophagus. And you might know these cats were into that kind of thing. And the deal was whoever could fit into it perfectly would keep it for their burial. So the fellas lined up, the ladies lined up, everyone gave it a go. But nobody fit. Cinderella story. Until Osiris, the king himself, gave it a try. And of course it fit him perfectly, because it had been cut to his dimensions for this great treachery. As soon as he was comfortably within, this new prize, surprise, Set and his 72 henchmen locked the lid, chained it, and Set threw it into the Nile. The sarcophagus sank. Osiris drowned. Down and down and down, the sarcophagus floated the river of the Nile until it crashed upon an island off the kingdom of Byblos. A tree magically grew instantly through the sarcophagus and around it, enclosing the dead Osiris and sarcophagus inside. The king of Byblos heard of this magic, and he knew this tree must be his, a pillar for his palace. And so it was. And so this rumor found its way to the ears of the queen, Isis. She disguised herself. She took a gig as nursemaid to one of the king and queen of Byblos' young sons, a new prince. By night, she would turn herself into falcon and fly about this pillar, weeping for her love, her brother, her consort, her husband, her king, Osiris. But she took a liking to this young prince as well, and she decided to give him the greatest gift. She decided she would burn the mortality off of him. Please, mothers, do not try this at home. In the last moments of prince burning, right when he was about to become a great god himself, his mother walked in and said, "What are you doing, my baby?" As you would. And Isis revealed her true form and said, "So sorry, he was moments away from immortality." Now the queen of Byblos fell to her knees. "My queen, my apologies. I had no idea this was you. How could you be a servant in my palace? What can I do to repay you?" And Isis said, "Yeah, that pillar right there, my dude's in it, and I'm taking it with me." And so she did, and she resurrected Osiris magically, and they lived happily ever after. For like a week or whatever. And the next time, Set really didn't mess with any of this Cinderella business. He simply cut his brother into 14 pieces, distributing throughout the land of Kemet, the land that we now call Egypt. Well, Isis and Nephthys and Thoth and Anubis went on a scavenger hunt, a world tour. And it said that everywhere they found one of these pieces, they consecrated one of the sacred temples of Kemet. This is the temple of Isis, and this is my friend Anna. And I wanted to say hello and thank you because I'm staying at her place and taking care of her kitten Mia while she ventures around the land of Kemet now. The temple of Isis. So 13 of these temples because they only found 13 of these 14 pieces. Now Isis could magically resurrect her husband. But the problem was one sacred piece was missing. A very important piece if you want to bring forth an heir. So Anubis knew that he could help bring Osiris back from the dead, but first Thoth must create a magical golden phallus. And he did. Isis turned herself into falcon and flew above this magical creation. and became pregnant with Osiris's child, the heir to the throne. Now Osiris went through the Duat, the underworld, and he eventually made his way to the heavens, where he is stationed in the sky as the stars that we have come to call Orion. A child was born to Isis, this magical virgin birth. Horus, the hawk-headed son of Isis and Osiris, the avenger raised to battle his uncle Set. And it's said that every day when the sun rises, Horus defeats his uncle. And every evening, his uncle Set wins when the sun sets. This, some suggest, will be our way for an eternity. Perhaps. The hawk-headed son of king and queen, whose blood runs through every pharaoh, king, and queen since. Horus, Isis, Osiris, the sacred trinity of Kemet. So, Osiris has become what we call Orion in the sky, and the bright star, the most powerful star. Sophis, Sirius, Isis, ever following her king, and they set together on our horizons. But where is their child? Where is Horus? Could he be this dove, Columbia, perhaps? Does this trinity remind you of something? This story of a virgin birth? Now, in Kemet, it's well known that Horus, the son of Isis and Osiris, the child of this magical virgin birth, is the sun of our sky. And if this is so, what about this guy with his golden solar halo? Christ, the Son of Man. The dove? Columbia? Well, of course, the constellations were Christianized. Why wouldn't you? And Julius Schiller did, 1627. Constellations got an upgrade from the old pagan myths. That boat Argo became the Ark of Noah, of course. All of them. And I find it very interesting that this constellation most of us call Orion, that in Kemet they knew as Osiris, was repositioned to Saint Joseph, the father, perhaps, of this odd virgin birth. Now the Isis star, the brightest star, Sirius, it became a sheepskin rug. Is this telling of the patriarchy, perhaps? Maybe something more. But the dove is the dove, Columbia. What about this district of Columbia? And these goddesses of Columbia that are all about. Perhaps that place was not named after a guy from Portugal and Spain and such. Saint Joseph, the father. Here he is holding an acacia sprig. Very interesting. An axe and some tools like the T-square and the compass. Tool you're going to need if you want to create a universe, I'm told. Holy blood, holy grail. Is Jesus Christ in this line that runs all the way from Horus, the avenger, from Osiris, from Isis. Christ, King of the Jews, it is written. The Last Supper. And the night before, when trying to find the right place to prepare this meal, he told 2 of his 12 apostles. He said unto them, Behold, when ye are entered into the city, there shall a man meet you, bearing a pitcher of water. Follow him into the house where he entereth in. The house. This is a term we astrologers are quite fond of. 12 houses. like 12 apostles. 12 signs like 12 apostles. One of them we call Aquarius. The associated constellation, the water bearer. Follow the man bearing the pitcher of water into the house in which he dwells. What is this about? Here's something he said the next day when on trial, but Jesus remained silent and gave no answer. Again the high priest asked him, "Are you the Messiah, the Son of the Blessed One?" "I am," said Jesus, "and you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven." What is this about? Later that day, a story that most of us know regardless of faith, crucified, one of three on the hill for that round of Roman torture. 3 crosses. The Son on the cross. And here it is, December 21st, 2012, right around noon. The Sun in the Milky Way. The cross of heaven, perhaps. In astrology, we speak about crosses a lot in circles. The cross of matter inside the circle of spirit is the glyph we use for this planet, the one you chose, Earth. Here's that same moment from the Tropic of Capricorn. The Earth glyph in astrology looks a little bit more like this medicine wheel that we see from so many peeps around the world. Now, in modern times, we draw the ancient lights with glyphs that are composed of 3 elements alone: the circle of spirit, the crescent of soul, and the cross of matter. We're going to look at a few excerpts from a open source, and that means free, astrology course that I've been creating. And it's hosted by the Cosmic Intelligence Agency, thanks to them. So morethan.astrology.com, you can find on the homepage a YouTube playlist that will take you to the 4 episodes I've posted so far. I'm aiming for 72. And I'm teaching astrology through the quadrivium, which is number and nature, sacred geometry, musical harmony, and astronomy, the sentient experience of the astrological craft. Symbol for the sun, the circumpunct, is this source in the center, and the circle of spirit, the indivisible, the endless, the one. Now, we're usually taught that this is 0, but 0 is a rather new phenomenon, you know? So back in the day, this was seen as the one, as the great symbol of spirit. Hermes Trismegistus tells us in the Emerald Tablets, "'Tis true without error, certain and most true, that which is below is like that which is above, and that which is above is like that which is below, to accomplish the miracles of the one only thing." He goes on to say, "And as all things have been and arose from one, by the mediation of one, so all things have their birth from this one thing, by adaptation." Cryptic, universal, this can be applied to anything. But I wonder, if the sun is spirit and indivisible, how could it possibly divide itself into a gazillion pieces? If spirit is that, how can there be unique souls? It's not allowed to divide itself, but through mediation, it can adapt itself. In geometry, I believe we call this translation. So I can play this trick by moving this compass of creation in any direction I wish, to adapt spirit into soul. And because the circle is actually a sphere, the great heavenly form, the goddess herself, I can move above this page, below this page, and reflect in an infinite amount of ways spirit to birth soul. Now here we see actually 2 crescents of soul when drawn this way, and this kind of Orphic egg between. But the indivisible cannot be divided. So truthfully, this should be drawn more in this manner, where we see sun and moon, spirit and soul, side by side, or one in front of the other. Now, again, I could draw this in so many ways, so many phases, infinite. But perhaps the greatest is shown when we draw as above, so below, starting our second circle at the edge, the circumference of the first. Which brings us this image, the image for a solar eclipse. This year we will have the Neil Diamond eclipse because it's coming to America. August 21st, first time since 1979, at the heart of the Lion, Regulus. And I was going to talk about the many alignments to this strange lion's birth chart of this eclipse because it's a fascinating thing. The old omens of the death of the king seem ripe for Rumpelstiltskin. But maybe we could have more interesting adventures into the occult and mysteries of the solar eclipse. And to do so, we're going to have to talk about dragons. So I hope that's okay. I heard that's how Sedona rolls. Right, this is Solar System Scope, a brilliant program I like to play with. You can do so for free online. And this is February 26, 2017, the Pisces solar eclipse, the last solar eclipse to this day. Moon between Earth and Sun, right? So the moon blocks the sun from our view. But the moon comes between Earth and Sun every month. Why don't we have a solar eclipse every month? Yeah? New moon, first quarter, full moon, third quarter, new moon. Moon between Earth and Sun. There it is. In a couple weeks from now, in April. May 25th, after that, the Gemini new moon this year, 2017. Moon just between Earth and Sun. Yet no eclipse. Why? Dragons, that's why. Gemini new moon, moon and sun, side by side, same degree of the zodiac. We call it a new moon. Why is this not a solar eclipse if that is? It looks the same to me. It looks the same to me as the one in August, the Leo, Heart of the Lion solar eclipse. What gives? Well, we're going to have to talk to dragons. Yeah. So this Leo new moon in August is at the North Lunar Node, the dragon's head. And the Pisces solar eclipse in February at the dragon's tail, the South Lunar Node, or the descending lunar node. This is the portion, by the way, where we get into some kind of techie teaching. So, if this feels too far out, let yourself journey. We'll come back to Starry Story sometime soon. I hope to transmit this in a way that's interesting and even slightly entertaining. The Gemini new moon, May 25th, 2017. Moon and sun just together, but not at the nodes. In fact, as far from the nodes as they can be. And we're called the bendings. This is at the southern bending of the dragon's belly new moon. Maybe we can meet that in another way. Professor Pluto is my favorite teacher of nodes. And so we're going to engage with the hidden hand of that one who roams so far away. And hopefully this shows up on this gigantic screen. But this is Pluto's orbital path, like this. And the rest of the planets are pretty much on this even line. This is one of the reasons why Pluto was recently demoted to dwarf planet by the whitecoats, but we astrologers know better. And we're going to look at what's called the ecliptic. You know, the Earth orbits the sun, as we know, and it does so in a plane. If we extend that plane towards infinity, we find the constellations of the zodiac, the 12 constellations. So as the sun is always in one of those constellations as the Earth moves about our light. And this is the truth for most planets too. And I'm pointing there at Mercury's orbit, which is tilted in respect to the Earth-Sun plane. None of the planets are in the same plane as Earth about the sun, which is called the ecliptic. But for the most part, they're traveling in a pretty flat way. But Pluto and the bodies that we found outside of Pluto don't do this. And this is why I love Pluto's transmissions for teaching nodes. This is May 10th, 2017, it looks like. And Pluto's pretty close at this time to the ecliptic plane. In fact, he's just at this time, in our time now, in fact, next year, descending from the realms above the ecliptic planes to the realms below. And that's called Pluto's descending node, or his south node, or Pluto's dragon's tail. Yeah, where a planet moves from above to below, and the moon does this too. But Pluto just shows this to us so much more beautifully. This happened in 1980-81. Pluto at the northern bending, the dragon's back, way up there. Yeah, it's also closer to Earth than Neptune, or closer to the sun than Neptune at that time as well. And there was other amazing astrological happenings at that time that Gary's going to tell us about later. So again, next year, Pluto comes down at his descending node, which is in the sign of Capricorn. So is Jupiter's. So is Saturn's. Pluto will eventually make his way to the dragon's belly, the southern bending, way below. And then after that, about a quarter way through his strange orbit, coming to the dragon's head, the ascending node, where he ascends from the below to the above. So for about 260 years for Pluto, the dragon's back, the dragon's tail, the dragon's belly, the dragon's head, the dragon's back, it's like that. The moon does this every month, really in about 27 days. Dragons! These are the glyphs that we use for the lunar nodes. In India, they are called Rahu, the ascending node or north node, and Ketu. And there's a beautiful transmission, an old story associated with them. I often have heard this in books or teachings that these are the headphones, or this is the horseshoe. Okay, and that's the upside down one. No, the south node comes from this, the marking on the back of the king cobra's head. Why? Because every month this moon snakes like a serpent above and below the ecliptic, the path of the sun, crossing from below to above at the dragon's head, peeking out at the dragon's back, the northern bending, coming back down at the descending node, dragon's belly far below the southern bending, just like that. The ascending node, the north node, is in Virgo now, has been since November 11th, 2015, 11/11. Kiss an angel. And the south node is always exactly opposite, so in the sign of Pisces, opposite Virgo. And the bending, the southern bending, the dragon's belly, is going to be forward from Pisces, halfway to Virgo. These are what we call the mutable signs. And the dragon's back in Sagittarius. So it's been like this, but this May, they will change. They have about an 18-and-a-half-year dance about the zodiac. And in May, they will move from Virgo to Leo because the nodes tend to travel in retrograde motion, going backwards through the signs of the zodiac. So when North Node moves into Leo, the South Node will be in Aquarius. And the bendings, and the other fixed signs, as we call them in astrology, Taurus for the southern bending, the dragon's belly, and Scorpio at the dragon's back above. Does that make sense? Kind of, a little. Dragons. All right. It makes it's a little easier to see in the sky. And this is why we engage physically and not just in these charts. So here is February 26, 2017. This is the Pisces solar eclipse. The moon came right between Earth and Sun, and it was at the ecliptic because it was at one of the nodes where it crosses. Same will be true in August. The Leo new moon will be a total solar eclipse because it's happening at the dragon's head, the north node. The moon crosses the nodes every month. We don't have to wait for eclipses to see this phenomenon. In fact, it happened last night. This is April 7th, right here. Moon in Virgo at the ascending or north node. This is the day before, April 6th. Here's April 5th. Yeah. So since that time, it has come to the node. It's crossed from below above because that's the dragon's head. And now will distance itself, finding its way towards the dragon's back. This is full moon. Monday, April 10th, 11:50 p.m. If we measure, 11:07 p.m. actually. If we measure from the center of the earth, so one thing I love about astrology, we measure these alignments from the earth center. Not from here where we can see them. Topocentric is what that's called for the full moon, is actually a couple hours before 9:39 p.m. But I love that we measure from the center because, if we reach our hands up, we're all pointing to a different star. The earth is round. It's through our feet, it's through the ground where we all connect in the heart of Gaia. Yeah, so the planets play with one another, engage with one another, and that energy comes alive in her heart and transmits out to us. So even when these eclipses, if they're across the world, if we're not in the path of totality, Sedona is not for the one in August. You'll have to go north if you want to see it. And I suggest you do. Just because you don't see it doesn't mean you don't be it. All right, so moon in Libra across from the sun in Aries, a full moon. And right now it's full Jupiter too. Jupiter has a 399-day dance with the sun. And yesterday was one of the sacred days in that timing when Jupiter reaches opposition. So Jupiter, Earth, Sun. And for us on Earth, that means when the sun sets, Jupiter rises. Jupiter sets when the sun rises. Midnight star, our friend Adam Gainsbourg has come to call it, dominating the night in its brightest apparition. So we'll be able to check out Jupiter later. Something else right now. And together they're very close to a beautiful star. So let's look at this in space where it's a little easier to see. Here's yesterday, moon at the node, right on the path of the ecliptic. If I go back the day before, can you see how the moon's below the red line? That's showing up in the slide? All right. So the next day, April 7th, it finds the node, the dragon's head, the ascending node, and ascends from the realms below to above. This is today. Tomorrow, the 10th, 2:14 in the morning, and the next day, just after the full moon. So now we can see how far the moon is above the red line there, the ecliptic, the Earth-Sun plane. The red line's way over here. And we're going to see this beautiful triangle with the full moon, Jupiter, moon, Spica, brilliant blue goddess star, the shaft of wheat that the priestess of the sky holds.
You want to turn off the lights? Because I think we might be able to see more.
Totally. They're behind us?
They're shining right on the screen. So
nice, thank you.
See. Are they there?
Outside light, that says, hey.
There you go.
Nice, thanks. Presentation rule number 1. Turn the lights off. All right, so the nodes, these dragons, the belly and the head and the back and the tail. All the planets have these nodes. And this is the Gemini new moon of May 25th at the bendings, at the southern bending, at the dragon's belly. So why don't we see a solar eclipse? Because the moon is very far below the sun from our perspective here in the northern hemisphere. Yeah? So we don't see the moon because it's blinded by the light, but we don't see an eclipse either, right? That's the only time we can see the moon during new moon. A little easier to see if I turn the lights out. And that one will be very close to the Pleiades, the 7 sisters. And in the mouth of the bull. And the moon is cheese, right? So this is some weird kind of cannibalism going down that I don't really want to get into. But what I do want to get into is why is this cheese moon at the bull a Gemini moon? And we're going to have to talk to dragons about that too. One more thing first from the launch pad. We reflect as above, so below. Spirit generates, adapting to soul, and gives rise to the sacred form, the womb, the mandorla, the Vesica Pisces, the Vesica Piscis, the fish's bladder is the name of this sacred shape. That is the womb of all geometry and creation. And we see it in traditions all around the world, the Vesica, a sacred ancient form of the yoni. That's an interesting one in DC. This strange phallus in a Vesica. The Vesica Pisces flipped around gives us the Pisces glyph. And once this too is born from this sacred womb, all sorts of shapes take form. The triangle first, equilateral. The triangle is such an important shape. It's the first time we really have form. 1 is a point, 2 is a line, 2 points make a line. Can't be seen really, theoretically. Once we have 3, we have a plane. We have something you can set your water bottle on. And in this Vesica, we see 2 triangles, the chalice and the blade above, the chalice below, the up and out, the down and in, the as without, so within. And we get the 4 directions and the medicine wheel when we find our way to the center of the Vesica. For the circle, it's easy because we started from source, but in this form, we have to find the middle way by connecting lines and drawing a new circle, which gives rise to the earth glyph, to the 4 directions, to the medicine wheel, and the shape of the human eye. Why? Because only here on earth can we see with our eye that sun and moon are the same size. And we know they aren't. But this is a place where symbolically spirit and soul are the same size. So we are all reflections of all that has adapted itself, that has reflected itself into you and you and you and you and you. Sun and moon, these sacred eclipses, this sacred union. And the dragons bring the eclipses to us, this serpent snaking of the nodes. Moving from below to above, peaking at the back, coming back down at the tail and the belly, the southern bending before it makes its way to the head again. The Pisces new moon, the dragon's tail. The Leo new moon of this year, the dragon's head. Solar eclipses. And this Gemini new moon at the dragon's belly. Not an eclipse at all. In fact, the furthest thing from it. But I'm very interested in these. You see, the eclipses, in a way, are like a super new moon. They're like a new moon for 6 months. We only have a couple of them a year. So we get together every month, many of us, and plant our seeds of intention for that month. The eclipses carry for 6 years. 6 months. But I'm feeling that, personally, they start 3 months before and end 3 months after. They're energetic. That, in a sense, it's at these bending times that we pass the energy or the baton from the previous eclipse to the next one. So in May, my feeling is that this energy, really that's been around for the Pisces solar eclipse in February, really that it's been around since November, when there was a new moon at the northern bending in Sagittarius. And then it really opens up at the eclipse and starts softening, and then the baton is passed. And in May, we'll start gearing up for this big Neil Diamond concert, the Coming to America solar eclipse. First total solar eclipse here since 1979. And I could talk about that all day, which probably won't surprise you at this point. So, this bull eating cheese, how the hell is the bull Gemini? That is a question I asked Jupiter from the jungles of Peru on December 15th, 2012, and that's when I started becoming as weird as I am now. Because I heard him speak back. So to find out why the bull is Gemini, we're going to have to meet another dragon. This one called Draco. A constellation of the sky that snakes its way about the bears of heaven, Ursa Major, which we usually know as the Big Dipper, and Ursa Minor, such an important constellation at our time, because in that strange long tail of a bear, at the end lies this star, Polaris, our current North Star. I took this star trail the other night, and what you'll see is the way that north works. The spine of Gaia points right there at Polaris. And so as the Earth spins, we see the stars spin about it. But it's not always our North Star. Correct this slide to say that it's Polaris now. Half of a long cycle ago, it used to be Vega. And it's said that the pole shifts over time because Earth has this bulge and the moon and the sun pull on its muffin top. And I think this is actually a little dated personally. But the point is that our spine right now points at Polaris, but it will not always. It slowly shifts in a cycle that Plato called the Great Year, about 26,000 years long. So for our entire lives, in the current age, Polaris will be our North Star. In fact, it's the most dialed-in North Star of all time, according to modern astronomical thought. And so all the stars spin about that star. But 5,000 years ago, and 21,000 years from now, because this is a cycle, not linear, it will be Thuban, one of the stars of Draco, one of the stars of the dragon. So you can see the North Star, well, it's gone. 2,000 years from now, Irai of Cepheus the king, and Polaris is way over here. But see the dragon right in the range? The dragon never gets too far away. A great circle in the sky is traced by our pole over this great cycle, which we usually know as precession of the equinoxes. And the dragon is right in the middle of all the potential North Stars. And right in the middle of it all is that golden crystal ball that the dragon holds. And just to prove my point, this is a dragon holding a crystal ball inside a crystal ball. Holy shit. All right. Dragons and bears. But no need to worry. We're all safe here. Polaris, our current North Star. But not always. I think Serpent Mound, and I'm not the first to think this, was built when Thuban was our North Star. Way before the archaeologists will say it's possible. Here's another image. This one puts our current pole star at the top. Vega, some time ago, some say in the Golden Age, was our North Star then. And if we stay up real late, we'll get to see them both. But tonight, because it will clear up, we'll see Polaris, we'll see Thuban, and we'll see Irai all in the sky at the same time. And my feeling is if you can just sit there and stare at one of these stars and imagine all of the stars going around it, you're time traveling. Either go back or forward. Maybe we'll play that game outside a little bit. So see how the dragon snakes about the center, the north of all potential norths. And look here, this is the Milky Way, the clouds of heaven, the river of stars. So Polaris is getting closer. Thuban, 5,000 years ago, was about as far from the Milky Way as you can get. Does it matter? Does it matter if our North Star points to the Milky Way? Is there more energy in these times? Is that why this is the Golden Age? And what about this Milky Way? Well, that's going to bring us to another dragon, or another serpent. The Ouroboros, here shown biting its own tail, wrapping itself around the world tree. And there it is in the sky. This photo I took the other night. It's a little easier to see if I just snakehead it real quick. Right now, check this out. You see the eye?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That is Saturn, who does this every 30 years. Alright, and 30 years ago was just about the time that the Milky Way found its way to set on Bell Rock. But this is Saturn as the eye of this great cosmic serpent that surrounds the Earth, the serpent of the sky, the Milky Way. And I'll get back to that. The compass, a different kind of compass. What a strange thing that it has the same name as this tool of creation that births east and south and west and north. And so we know that because the Earth is tilted, its spin axis, as it orbits the sun, we have seasons, yeah? As we're leaning towards the sun, summer solstice, that moment where the lean is most accurate. When we lean away, winter solstice. This slide, by the way, northern hemisphere perspective. We know it's the opposite in the southern hemisphere. So this yellow bit here is that ecliptic. It's the plane of Earth about the sun, or if we on Earth, we can think of it as the sun about us through the constellations of the zodiac. This dashed line is if I extended the equator of the Earth all the way out into space, because the Earth is tilted in perspective to its orbit, in respect to its orbit, then they don't align perfectly, which is why we see the ecliptic or the zodiac as a curve in our sky. And well, what's that look like? Dragons. See what I'm saying? So we have these lunar dragons, yeah? And we also have dragons of the Earth-Sun relationship. Gary and I are the only ones I've really heard talk about this for some reason. It just seems like the thing to me. I mean, it's like the same image, right? So at spring equinox, resurrection, when light overcomes night. We're coming back up from the darkness. We're coming back up from the lowest expression of the sun at winter solstice. Yeah? So this is the ascending node, the dragon's head. And we peak at the dragon's back, summer solstice, height of the light. Come back down, we fall back down through this descending node at the south, moving from above to below, and the nights start growing pretty long, and the longest at, in a way, this dragon's belly. The southern bending would be the winter solstice. Now, if we put our astronaut helmets on and went warrior pose out there and looked north, well, our arms are going to be facing east and west, right? And this means that if north is changing over this long 26,000 year cycle, as the pole is moving in regard to space, if north is changing, well, east and west, south are going to change too. And it doesn't change it on Earth, right? So the mountain that is north is still north. What changes is the way that that northern mountain aligns to the stars behind. It's a shifting in the marriage of heaven and earth. This is really important. Tropical astrology, Western astrology, for the most part, most of us call seasonal astrology, though it also works in the southern hemisphere where the seasons are flipped. So what I'm finding is that it's not seasonal astrology, it's directional astrology. North is north everywhere in the globe. Except maybe at the poles where it's everywhere or nowhere. But everywhere else where it's safe to hang out, right? And in tropical astrology, directional astrology, we begin the zodiac with Aries in the east. So let me show you a little something. Here's east, Aries, the first sign of the wheel of life, which goes this way because the earth spins this way. There you go. This is from the equator. If you look due east, you've got some constellations and stars rising straight overhead, some branching off towards the south, some branching off to the north. Can you see the Aries glyph there? Mm-hmm. So I'm positive because of this, because the sky taught me this, that whoever created this Aries glyph, and my understanding is nobody really knows when they came about, was a directional astrologer. Was not a sidereal astrologer. What does that mean? We're going to get back to that. What if I take the ground away? Because software lets me do this. This is a brilliant software, Stellarium, which you can play with for free. It's stellarium.org. Well, up and, So one thing I meant to say while it was still going is that the East is like this permanent fountain of youth. It's always new. It only rises. It only ups. Yeah? The rise. For us in the Northern Hemisphere, the southern sky is where the reach is, where everything culminates, where the sun, the moon, all the planets, the zodiacal constellations reach their height, and then they go to rest in the west. They root in the north. The Northern Hemisphere, above the Tropic of Cancer, is the disclaimer. You will never, ever, 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 ever see the sun in the northern sky. That's where it's sleeping before it finds its way to the roots below the ground and comes back up to the east to rise, the fountain of youth. This video courtesy of Nick Fiorenza, is a wonderful astrologer, and one of the first ones to tune into something that I'm on my way back towards, galactic alignment, the sacred happening of our time. And so as north shifts, you can see above the spine of Gaia, the rotational axis moving through the heavens. Well, this is going to move the east and west points, the equinox points, these nodes of the Earth-Sun dragon through the signs. And it is said that that ascending node, the vernal equinox node, the spring equinox node, and I gotta say again, northern hemisphere, whatever constellation it's aligned to, or maybe whatever sign it's aligned to, determines the astrological age, hence the dawning of the age of Aquarius. Why aren't constellations and signs the same thing? Because the stars, through this long 26,000 year about cycle, are shifting in perspective to the directions. So the constellations don't change for a sidereal zodiac, which is utilized by most of the Jyotish astrologers, the astrologers in India and many others as well. But it does if you start your zodiac not with a star, but with the directions, as we do, most of us do in the West. This is today at 4:44:44. Saturn peaking, reaching his height in the south, which means this is AM, by the way. Let's bring some constellations in and some cartoons and check this weird thing out. Let's go look over at Jupiter here. Right now, Jupiter's in Libra. Well, what's the problem here? These are the scales, right? That's what a lot of Libra people I know get tattooed on their arm, and I'm like, oops. Because their sun was aligned actually to this constellation. We're right now in this cycle shifted about one constellation off when we look at directional Western astrology that tunes the zodiac to the Earth, to this planet we chose. Yeah. So Gary and I both are very star-based, constellation-based astrologers. If you have a reading with either of us, you'll almost hear as much about your constellations as you do about your signs. But we do also honor, I shouldn't speak for Gary here, that they are different things. So Libra Jupiter aligned to the priestess. And in India, they're like, what the hell are you talking about? Look, right? But we are aligned to the direction. So the thing is, for us, Aries will always be the vernal equinox, but it won't always be aligned to the same constellation. Over there, Aries will always be aligned to the constellation called Aries, that I call the Ram, to differentiate the two. But eventually it will be in the summer, and then in the fall and in the winter, right? So we're tuned into the seasons by the directions, and they're tuned into the stars. And I think we should honor both. So Saturn right now in Sagittarius, and yet it's more aligned to the Scorpion. The Scorpion tail goes so far below that some people are trying to tell us there's a 13th constellation, Ophiuchus. Perhaps you've heard this rap. And here is Ophiuchus standing on the galactic center. Very beautiful and amazing constellation. We'll get back to him. For now, someone who gave me their permission to use their chart, because I'm him, this is my birth chart. Now you know everything about me, and now you don't. But you do know I'm a Scorpio sun and a Gemini moon, and a Gemini rising. Why don't I call myself Scorpio Brett? Well, I'm going to rewind a few hours before my birth to get the sun above the horizon, which is the horizontal line on the chart, because it's the ground. This is the sky. Rise, reach, rest, roots. So this is all underground. I was born at night. So I'll go back a little bit in time before my birth. Sorry, Mom. And here's that sun, 1st degree of Scorpio. All right? Now, in the sidereal astrology, in our current day, most of the sidereal astrologers subtract about 24 degrees, which would say that I'm a Libra, not a Scorpio. But when I look to the sky, here's that same sun aligned to the constellation called Virgo. So when am I, Scorpio or Libra or Virgo? Or I'll just call myself Gemini, because the whole thing's damn confusing, you see. So the constellations are one thing, the directional signs are another thing, and the sidereal zodiac basically divides the 360-degree circle into 12 equal slices, beginning with a star. So in the West, in tropical and directional astrology, we begin with vernal equinox. That begins Aries. And the Jyotish astrologers, I'm pretty sure they're working with that beautiful star Spica that Jupiter and the moon will align to for full moon, because it's currently at 24 degrees of Libra in the Western system, so this is the difference. And then they split the zodiac into 12 equal slices. Well, the issue there is the constellations do not. The Virgin, the priestess, is like 47 degrees. Yeah, that's a lot more than 30. And the big warrior ram is like this tiny little thing. So there's, in a sense, these three zodiacs. There's the directional zodiac we use in the West, this star-based equal sign zodiac used by most astrologers in India and other places, and then the constellational zodiac, so damn confusing, even more so that the great astrologers at NASA are telling us there's a 13th sign. Space place. First things first, astrology is not astronomy. All right, clear? Astrology is not science. Leo Schmeo. And for some reason, astrologers are listening to these cats about how to astrologize, but Cosmo actually set it straight, right? So Cosmo will tell you what your real sign is, all right? So sorry, you might be an Ophiuchus. Now, I will say that this thing, which is constellational, actually gets me right. I'm a Virgo by constellation, October 24th. But see, they call it your star sign. And that's where they're off. That's where they don't even understand how we roll around here. This is not about the stars out there. It is about the earth and about our star, the one we call Sol. At the galactic center, where that cosmic serpent bites its own tail, the only two arrows of the zodiac signs, the arrow of the archer Sagittarius, the tail of the scorpion Scorpio. Well, the constellations, which are no longer aligned to those signs, but the constellations traditionally associated with those signs in the sky, point exactly towards the galactic center. Do you think that's a coincidence? And standing on the galactic center is the great serpent tender, Ophiuchus, the healer Asclepius, the one who raised the dead. So beautiful, Ophiuchus, but is he a constellation? I don't think so. Why? Because if we ask the count, how many signs are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. I learned it on Sesame Street. I learned it from my clocks. I learned it from this, the seed of life. For this is how creation creates. And we are proof. This is what happened with you. From a single cell to flower of life. 6 circles about one make the seed. Perhaps the 7 days of creation. 6 up, 6 down, 6 in, 6 out. 12 notes in a Western harmony musical octave, here arranged by circles of fifths. 12 colors on the wheel of hues, and here the musical 12 arranged in 6 and 6 whole tones, above and below. And here we see that son of man, daughter of woe man, maybe, son of God, the Lamb, arranged in the center as the light between these 12 apostles. Are they not the signs? Thomas was one of their names. You know what Thomas means? Twins. Actually, his name was Didymus Thomas, which means twins, twins. Hello, Gemini. This is a really interesting one to me because there's 13 around Christ here. Is one Ophiuchus? No. Mary. Moon. So in my personal cosmology, the light, the sun, is the sun, the Christ, and Mary is the moon. And there are many Marys. Why? Many faces. And we have these 12 apostles. This one's very interesting, though. Not just 12 on the outside, is very old, but 14, including the sun and this moon boat below. Whoa! And that brings me back to this guy. All right. So we were warned, and not just by Hollywood. Hopi prophecies from pretty close by, though rather modern prophecies to my understanding speak about the blue and the red star Kachinas. And it said the blue star will come as a warning, and not long after, some suggest 7 years, the red star, the purifier, will come. And we all better run. Some have suggested that the red star, Kachina, might just be Betelgeuse, the shoulder of Orion of his club hand. Why? Because astronomers suggest that that very red star might supernova soon, might explode, and we'll see it even during the daytime. This happened not too long ago, 1054, recorded in Chaco Canyon, suggested by researchers, recorded also by astronomers around the world, certainly in China. But when I searched for that on the internet, I got this thing. And I was told that actually the Chinese were recording the guest star, which is the fury dragon of old, I think. The fury dragon of fuzzy blur. And I'm into dragons, clearly, but I'm not so sure about this thing. It can have you reaching straight for your Nibiru button. Maybe you've heard about that so-called avenging planet that's coming to wreck us and shows up as, camera issues in the horizon often. So some are looking for the Anunnaki, right? Zecharia Sitchin's Anunnaki, the great god race that created us to be their slaves and mine gold to return and judge us all. Okay. Maybe. But this is a very interesting correlation that kind of brings it back home to this area. Is the Hopi say that there have already been 4 worlds, and that when the blue and red stars come, that the 5th world will be born when this one is destroyed. And it doesn't sound too pretty, especially if you read how the first few went down. But when that happened, they went down, they went underground. They were taken to safety by the ant people. And it's very interesting that in the Hopi language, ant is Anu, and friend is Naki. So are these guys coming on some weird planet to crush us, or are they going to come save us and take us to hang out in the beautiful inner earth? Well, maybe that's getting a little woo. Maybe this slide is too. So let's move along. Let's bring it back down a little bit. This one thing I really love in this prophecy, which is this. Those who return to the ways given to us in the original teachings and live a natural way of life will not be touched by the coming of the purifier. They will survive and build a new world. Only in the ancient teachings will the ability to understand the messages be found. How does a privileged white kid who grew up in Las Vegas find his way to the ancient teachings? And here we are in this strange awakening, and this opportunity to sit with elders of the earth who have been around for a long time. For fortunately, many of these traditions have survived. And I think many of you, like me, are learning to listen to the stars in the sky, and to the plants, and to the animals, who somehow are teaching us to be human. What if everyone listened? What if I could listen more? Do we need to dance to the Kachinas to keep them from wrecking the earth? Do we need to appease the sun from destroying us once again by blood sacrifice? This is a fun synchronicity which happened all the time when I'm building these things. I looked for Aztec sacrifice, bam, and look on the right. The man bearing the pitcher of water. Which I guess will bring us back here. Aquarius, Aquarius, follow him into the house. The man bearing the pitcher of water. So the idea of the age of Aquarius, this thing that's been sung about in that great musical Hair, dawns when the vernal equinox point, the dragon's head of the Earth Sun dragon, aligns to the constellation called Water Bearer. Now I went to see this myself, and the thing is, the sun rose, and all I saw was the sun. So fortunately in software we can play this game that isn't as embarrassing, and I can see where the sun is on vernal equinox, but the trip is I really don't need the sun there. This blue curve is that celestial equator, Earth's equator out into space, and the red curve the ecliptic. And because, again, the Earth is tilted in respect to its orbit, they're not the same curve. And that means they have these two crossing places. Yeah? So one thing I want to show is, look how the ecliptic, the red line, the zodiac, is not always east. This is one of the greatest astrological confusions when we look at a chart. It gets cleared up real quick when you get to learn the sky. So all really I have to do is look at the east point. Look at one of these crossing. Look at these dragons' head in this case. Where is the dragon's head aligned to the constellations? Well, today in 2017 to the fish. 2017 BC to the bull. When it was a time of bull worship, right? I would suggest more about the cow. Hathor, the great mother. At least at the beginning of that age. And so we'll kind of jerkily move our way through the ages here. You can see the date there in yellow. We're still in BC. There's 1491 BC. Moved into the ram. let my people go, the shepherd kings. And he received the tablets, thou shalt not kill, and then slayed 3,000 of his people because they were worshiping a golden bull after his 40 days and 40 nights. And then this son, this good shepherd, the lamb was born who became the fisher king. Do you see this transmission from the age of the bull to the age of the ram to the age of Pisces? Because like the nodes, these also move retrograde. So the question is, when will the age of Aquarius begin if we're waiting for that node to move into the constellation Water Bearer? Here's 3600. It's well in there. Looks to me like 3300, maybe 3000 AD is when it really starts. But see, that's when we are working with these constellations and not with equal signs. If we work with equal signs, it depends when you start. 72 years for 1 degree of this precessional shift. 360 degrees, 25,920 years is the full cycle from this numerology. All of these add to 9. And 25,920 divided by 12 signs is 2,160 years. So if I say the coming of Christ, instead of BC, I like to call it BP, before Pisces, then that means 2160 AD will be the age of Aquarius, the dawning of the age of Aquarius. You probably won't be in the current monkey suit you're wearing. Maybe. Maybe if you get all transhumanistic or whatever Google wants me to do. All right, these bendings. Because this is something that is definitely happening right now, and we can see it in the sky with our eyes. Galactic alignment. Now, my feeling is that the age of Aquarius has already risen, or at least we're transitioning into it, because astrology suggests it'll be pretty tech. And I've got a thing here with 258 slides and a lot of moving parts and whatnot. And I could Skype Indian and debate the finer points of galactic alignment if I chose. This is 2025, where you saw the sun was still aligned to galactic center. 23, 25. It's getting out there, do you see? 27, 25, way out. Yeah, so this is the winter solstice sun, which in our time is aligned to the galactic center. Here's 4,000. 2,000 years from now, no way in the claws of the scorpion. Though at that time, the equinox point will be well into the water bearer's sash, I guess we'll call that thing he's wearing. Galactic alignment. So 2160, numerological movement into Aquarius, the node's still with the fish. So again, it depends if you want to work with constellations or if you want to work with signs. And if you want to work with signs, it depends where you start them. The age of Aquarius thing is pretty confusing, but the galactic alignment thing is not at all. So Nick Fiorenzo is one of the first people to see that this was going to go down because he was watching the sky and he knew about precession. He's like, wow, soon the solstices are going to align to the galactic center, and started doing work on this thing. He calls our time now the gate of man, and the time on the other side of the circle about 13,000 years ago, the gate of God, in his language. Another astrologer who was first to tap into this was my first teacher, Daniel Gemario of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, sky astrologer. And he wrote about this. I mean, he basically devoted himself to this thing. I was really pleased in my second read of my favorite book about this subject, one that I recommend everybody read. It's not an astrological text, Galactic Alignment by John Major Jenkins, who is a Mayan scholar, amazing writer, and who's really devoted his life to discovering these mysteries of the calendar. He's not the first one to come up with the 2012 date. That was known by Mayan academics some time ago, but he was the first one to see, and he was led, and he references Daniel in this book, by Daniel and Nick, to understand that what the Mayans were transmitting of the 2012 so-called end date of the long count calendar, which is about 5,125 years long. Started 3114 BC in August, ended December 21st, 2012, and began then, because it's a cycle. He understood that what they were talking about was galactic alignment. Not in this calendar either, because this is a different calendar of 260 days, the Sultan. This, the Ouroboros snake, the serpent biting its own tail, now aligned to directional winter solstice, December solstice, as Sagittarius becomes Capricorn. The northern hemisphere, the birth of the sun. The birth of the sun there. In this sacred place of space that the astronomers call the galactic bulge. Sounds kind of sexy. And we're told it's the sun of our sun. That as Earth orbits the sun as our planets do, the sun itself is orbiting a supermassive black hole in galactic center. Yeah? And John, in this book, Galactic Alignment, again, I can't recommend you read it enough, will tell you some of the different translations, transmissions of this secret occulted teaching, not only from the Mayans, but from Vedic traditions, from Mithra traditions, from all over the world. It's a really amazing read. So the supermassive black hole, which it seems the Mayans called Hunahpu. And this symbol has been found in their weavings. And it seems that it has been suggested that it is great-grandmother, grandfather, who created us and feed us with light. Looks kind of like a vortex, Sedona. Looks kind of like a black hole, white hole. And in our time now, and not just in 2012, maybe a 100-year period, Major Jenkins says 1975 to 2025 is the range he gives for this galactic alignment. This is happening. The birth of the sun aligned to great-grandmother, grandfather. The son on the cross. Oh wait, who's that guy? Oh right, that's first father, one Hunahpu, from the Maya tradition. Look familiar? A bearded dude on a cross. Yeah? And he is the son. And he will be reborn in the galactic rift, which is the womb. From grandmother, grandfather. This is what John Major Jenkins decoded. He shows in the Mayan ball game and many of their traditions. Do we see it in traditions of the West? If we want to call this that. 3 crosses. We saw 3 dragons. How about 3 crosses? What about where the moon's path crosses the sun's path? Dragons. What about where the Earth's path, in a way, or the Earth's ecliptic plane, its orbit, and its equatorial plane, its spin cross? The Earth-Sun dragons. Cross number 2. What about cross number 3? The sun, which is orbiting this, we are told by science, and the galactic equator, the Milky Way, the Ouroboros snake that embraces us all, always. 3 crosses and 3 dragons, aligning now. Galactic alignment. So this is a significant thing. This is 2017 winter solstice. It ain't over. Yeah, so the Hollywood cats might have cashed in and closed the box office for that one. This thing is still happening. In fact, I believe in a way it's coming into form now. Just like all the other dragons, this one has 2 sides, a head and a tail. So opposite the galactic center is the galactic anti-center. Doesn't sound as romantic. Really, this star right here, which is the northern horn of the bull, Elnath, if we look at that star, we're looking exactly away from the center of the galaxy out into intergalactic space. Notice where the summer solstice sun then is now. The height of the light, the glory of the king. Sitting at the hand of the high man is the way that the Celts transmitted this in their prophecies. On the clouds of heaven, Sedona folks with dark sky know what the clouds of heaven are. That's the Milky Way. Unfortunately, not all humans will see it in their life anymore. And you will see the Son of Man sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One, coming on the clouds of heaven. Is this describing our time as well? The sun at this cross? So Saturn says bring it into form a little bit. The winter hexagon, that's what the astronomers call this sacred shape, an asterism that's formed of many stars from different constellations. Canis Major, Isis, Sirius, the dog star, the brightest star, Rigel's right foot, which is why we came there. Aldebaran, the Eye of the Bull. Capella, the bright star of Auriga, the charioteer. Castor and Pollux, the heads of the Gemini twins. And Canis Minor, the little dog. Procyon. Make this great hexagon, which the Lakota called the sacred hoop. And they have many transmissions of it. They say it's the red robe, they say it's the racetrack, one of their great stories that tells how humans survived after we had lost the way some time long ago. But it's also called the sacred hoop, the birthplace of our souls, which is very interesting because in other resources, I guess, or different traditions, the same idea is transmitted. I stumbled because I forgot to talk about this slide. As above, so below. The Lakota see that sacred hoop of stars mapped onto the ground as the Black Hills in South Dakota. Why this land that was taken from them, so sacred. They actually say that they came up from inside the earth from that place that their ancestors did. Sounds familiar? Well, this is a weird slide I came to in the middle of the night. The green one in the sacred hoop of stars. Activation and attunement. I want to meet this guy. And the ibis bird, so I see Thoth. And the green one. This is the original green man. It is said, Osiris. The tree of life grew right through him. The traditions from Kemet, supposedly handed down through the mystery schools, speak about the silver gate in this place of the heavens. And they say that this is where our souls come from, just like the Lakota's sacred hoop transmission. Some have called it the silver key of Pete. He's got a golden key too, you know. Where is that? Well, the Lakota also say that this is a Nipi, this is Sweat Lodge. That after we die, our souls will move through the center of the Big Dipper where a star used to be, and now there lives the blue midwife who will take us and bring us to a Nipi, bring us to the lodge so we can be purified and cleansed for our sacred journey on the road of heaven, the Milky Way, and find our way somewhere to the other side. Which reminds me, I should plug my computer in. Hey, where's my back? Rule number 1, turn the lights out. Rule number 2, plug the computer in, dude. We're not, see, this is proof that the age of Aquarius is not completely yet dawned. Or else I would just be Tesla tapping into the ethers right now. Yay. Pardon me. And thank you for your patience on this journey. We're soon arriving to our destination. Right, where is the destination? So, Ronald Goodman sat with a lot of Lakota elders. He looked at some old maps, and they were all of this northern side of the sky, nothing in the south. But he did say that where the souls will go after they cross this road of heaven, the Milky Way, is to the southwest. Well, that's where the galactic center sets. In fact, from the Standing Rock site, galactic center sets directly over the Black Hills. And from Black Hills, the sacred hoop rises over Standing Rock. The Golden Gate, where our souls will go, say some of the old mystery schools, coming from that sacred hoop, moving towards galactic center. This is the journey of a star called Soul. Ophiuchus, the serpent tender. Is he 13? I mean, there were 13 temples only after all, right? And there he is, standing on galactic center. I mean, clearly so important. Does he relate in some way to this green man? Is there a 13th sign? Well, if there's 13, I suggest there's most likely 14. Now, there's a thing that interests me about Ophiuchus as well from the stories of Kemet. It said that when we die and enter the halls of Osiris, if we can make it there, our heart will be cut out and weighed in the scales against the feather of Ma'at, who is wisdom and truth. If we can make it there, and there's a lot of tests on the way. And if your heart is as light as that feather, but no lighter than, you will ascend. In some transmissions of these old texts. I see this in the sky. Antares, the heart of the scorpion, on one side of the scales. And on the other side, Spica, that great goddess star. To me, she is the feather of Ma'at, who is truth and wisdom. And as we make our way here towards Galactic Center, perhaps we go through that test. Or perhaps we can instead ride this kind of Kundalini serpent wave up to the northern crown, held by this great healer, Asclepius, who now standing on Galactic Center, because this is winter solstice, in our day and only in our day, in this great year, this great 26,000 year cycle, is as close to Earth as possible in the northern hemisphere. Do we have more access to the healer? Or is it that the healer's low and the hunter's up? Our world seems to reflect that to me a lot right now. So here's this shift of the pole, this great year. But Yukteswar, Yogananda's teacher in the Holy Science, and he mentions this also in the autobiography of the yogi, claims that this movement of Earth's spine is the mechanism of our transition through the yugas, through the ages. Yeah, in the West, you typically call these gold, silver, bronze, and iron. Iron, the Kali Yuga. The Yukteswar system is 12,000 years on the way down, 12,000 years on the way up. Not 25,920 years, because he says the rate changes. In fact, NASA measures it today at 71.6 years, not 72. But Set had 72 henchmen, and George Washington surrounded by 72 stars. And 7 plus 2 is 9. He says this wobble thing isn't how it's happening either, but rather that our star soul has a binary friend, a partner. So who knows where it is, but together we are dancing as together we orbit the center of the galaxy, or Hunabku if we want to juggle some traditions. This is a great book, Lost Star of Myth and Time by Walter Crittenden, who's taken this idea of Yukteswars and tried to look for our sun's partner. And his solution is that it's Sirius, one thing he suggests. And I gotta say, while I don't necessarily feel it's all about Newtonian physics, the math works. Galactic Center is way more massive than this brightest star, Sirius, but there's actually 3 stars here, and Sirius B is a white dwarf, which is a whole lot of mass. It's so much closer to us that according to Newton's theories, it actually has more gravitational pull in our sun than the sun of our sun, the galactic center, does. Is Isis the partner star to her virgin child, Horus? That would kind of make sense. And here she is with that green man, Orion, whose belt points right to her in the sky. These 3 stars that to this day many still call the 3 kings, who found their way to that birth one winter day, or was it the spring? Many sites around the world have mapped these 3 king stars onto Earth. China, Mexico, Egypt. Are they pointing to Orion? Are they pointing to Osiris? The Nazca Lines in Peru. This is one of the Hopi Mesas. And brilliant work, local guy, an Arizona guy, Gary David, has shown that Orion is also mapped into the southwest. And this one is huge. The 3 Hopi Mesas, which I don't think they built, are arranged in the same geometry as Orion's belt. One of Orion's belt stars is a double star binary, and they built 2 kivas on that one. Chaco Canyon is Sirius. And Sedona is up here by Orion's head. So you're living in Orion. Some newer alignments, I guess. Orion's Belt is the two towers that are no longer in New York City, and the Freedom Star that's replaced them. Who's doing this? And it didn't just begin, because we saw this in the Capitol building, constructed some time ago. The car of history, whose clock, with 12 signs by the way, is between two of them, Sagittarius and Capricorn, winter solstice. Well, across the way at the Library of Congress, the largest library in the world in this day and age, you enter under this beautiful statue, shown here in a picture taken by Carrie Caton, I believe, Astronomia, the muse of astronomy, holding that globe. Look at the zodiac, the signs of the fall, Libra, Scorpio, Sag. Well, these two tails are the ones that point to the galactic center, and she's gazing right at Polaris. In 2,000 years, she'll be gazing right at Iriae when it becomes our North Star. And I've shown in my work that the DC compass is aligning itself to this cross in DC and showing us Orion's Belt, White House, Washington Monument, Jefferson Memorial. You can check out Washington Deciphered Star Mysteries of DC. It's a 3-hour, 33-minute, and 33-second movie I have online for free. You can find that at morethan.astrology.com as well, if you want to go deeper into that thing. The Hand of the High Man, the Irish Orion, are these prophecies about the summer solstice sun, the height of the light, on his club, our time. Is that what this is about? Coming on the clouds of heaven, sitting at the right hand of the Mighty One. And it wasn't just 2012, as John Major Jenkins tells us. It's happening now, and it will happen for some time. But this year, it's happening with Saturn, Earth, Sun, Saturn, Hunabku. And I love when I put the planet here, we can see the Tao in the vortex as well. My prayer, actually, is that John Major Jenkins' work will come into form. It's already happened, but will be known. That people will understand the importance of this work at this time. Because it's nice to know that this is a very sacred time. We're feeling that. I think we're feeling time speeding up, as Yuta Shwarm might have suggested it would. So here's December solstice 2017, Saturn right with Hunabku on Galactic Alignment Day. Venus is pretty close too. 2018, Sun's kind of alone in this one, but Saturn is close by, and Mercury and Jupiter and Sagittarius right at the heart of the Scorpion. 2019, it will be Jupiter with the Sun, Earth, Sun, Jupiter, galactic center. And the south node, the dragon's tail of the moon, is very close by. What's that mean? That means we're going to have an eclipse very soon after. Christmas Day, eclipse, 2019, during galactic alignment. What does that mean? 2020, Mercury, thrice great with the Sun, Earth, Sun, Mercury, galactic center. This slide should read 2020, not 2019. December solstice 2020 is Mercury and Sun aligned to galactic center. Jupiter and Saturn will conjoin as they do every 20 years. And Gary's going to tell us all about that shortly. By the way, I've got about 6 more minutes, and then Water's going to get us back in our bodies with some stretches and some beautiful music. And Gary will go for 60 to 75 minutes, and then the sky will be really clear. As you can see, it's happening now. We'll go up and see some stars together if you can hang out. All right, so 2020, here we go. Mercury with the Sun, the exterior conjunction, and Jupiter with Saturn in Aquarius. Is this one of the keys to the dawning of Aquarius? Tuned to galactic alignment. The node's still close by. There's a solar eclipse the week before December 14th in the sign of Sagittarius at the dragon's tail. The dragon's head eclipse 6 months before on summer solstice. June 20th, 2020, the Sun on the clouds of heaven at the hand of the Mighty One, joined by Moon. Now there's a cycle called Metonic cycle. It's a short cycle, but eclipses can sometimes repeat in 19-year patterns. What's 19 years before 2020? The solar eclipse before 9/11. This is where the one 2020 will be seen, by the way.
Wow.
June 21st, summer solstice solar eclipse. Hand of the High Man solar eclipse. Less than 3 months before 9/11. And on that day, the moon had come back to the node where the eclipse had happened at summer solstice. And shortly thereafter, when the moon found its way to the sun, it was at the bendings, at the dragon's back, where I'm feeling that baton is passed from the previous eclipse to the next one, which was December 14th, 2001. We were in Afghanistan by this point. Tricky Rumsfeld released this letter about we need to go to Iraq as well. So does something in that cycle come forth also in 2020, and how can we transcend that nonsense into something more beautiful? Eclipses clearly are about shadow work, but in that shadow we can bring forth a brighter light. Because even in this maybe darkest initiation collectively of our time, here anyway, many of us have fallen into these rabbit holes that get opened in the Twin Towers and have risen like twin flowers, come out of that dark conspiracy pain and brought light back. Yeah? Like the crow who brings the shiny stuff to their home. So what do we have to do to survive this warning? Do we have to be monks? And if so, how and what does that mean? I think it's in our own lives, yeah? I think knowing this is happening is it's enough for me. It's enough for me when I start slipping from the way that I want to be, to remind myself that this is a very sacred time. Perhaps the most sacred time in this long cycle. And that this might be this birth. This might be a really beautiful time to hear some guitar as well as we wrap things up. This cat said we could all be like him. And what does that mean? Especially if he is the sun. Are we all sons? What do we call our sun today? Soul. So what does it mean that soul on this journey is currently aligned to Galactic Center, the Golden Gate, the place we are going? Well, to get where we're going, it said that we are meant to know where we are coming from. The Silver Gate, the sacred hoop. And remember, there was a 14th piece. So if Ophiuchus is number 13, certainly 14 is on the other side. With the Lakota say we will go to the southwest after we die, the journey of souls towards Galactic Center. And you see, the Mayan teachings confirm this even to this day. When newlyweds move into their new home, the hearth is built, fire is brought, and the shamans build 3 stones that symbolize 3 stars that surround the smoke of creation. And they are the feet of Orion, Saiph, Rigel, and the easternmost belt star, the kings, Alnitak, surrounding the smoke of creation. So let's go there now. Below those 3 kings is Orion's sword. Well, if this is Osiris, wouldn't that be the golden phallus? The source of the sun? And when we journey there, we find what the astronomers call Messier object number 42, the Orion Nebula. In the golden phallus, this incredibly beautiful, rather sacred Volvic nebula, and I am convinced that the Mayan transmissions and the Egyptian as well are telling us that this is where our sun, our soul, was born. Please don't tell the astronomers I said that. Well, if you play with geometry, and I hope you'll join me on this quest for the arts of the chart, you'll know that if you divide a circle in 4 and also in 5, the cross and the pentagram can only meet in one place. The Mayans divided the cycle into 5 because 5125, the long count calendar, times 5 brings you to the precessional cycle. They're short of 25,920. They're actually a little closer to what NASA is saying today. And so we are at a time where the galactic center is on the cross. And we are at a time where the Mayans transmitted this too. So every 6,500 years we can get to the cross, or every 5125 to one of these Mayan ages. But this is the time where both of these worlds agree. This is the time. As you know, what will we do about it as we are dawning into this age of Aquarius? Well, the secret is in Messier object number 42, because that is the answer to the questions of life, the universe, and everything. So says the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And this reminds me that one of the most important things we can be at this time of rebirth is the Fool. The 0th card of the deck, right? Wrong, because that card is older than 0. Just like Death was the nameless card, Fool was the numberless card. So is it the beginning or is it the end? Or is it the beginning of the end of the beginning again? This is what's happening now. Great compost. What can we do in our lives to compost the old patterns and programs into rich soil to plant new seeds? And to grow. And to get lighter, not heavier. For in the story of the virgin child, that is you. And me, if we choose to be. It said we can be born once of our mother, once of spirit, so maybe a gazillion times might be more accurate there. But through the alchemical tradition, and Gary's going to tune us in, through the Hieros Gymos, through the sacred marriage, embracing our feminine and masculine, we can rebirth ourselves. And this is a virgin birth indeed. And this, another beautiful photo by Gary Caton in Washington, D.C., is Venus, whose 5-pointed star gives her away, and our greatest guide, Hermes, thrice great. And a great opportunity for a plug, because I would love to offer you a discounted reading, Venus specific, for her 40 days and 40 nights retrograde, just like 40 days and 40 nights in the desert for the Christ, or 40 days and 40 nights on Mount Sinai for Moses, or 40 years in the desert during Exodus. Venus retrogrades for that long, and that's happening now. And it's a very important cycle for her, and I love tuning people into the scene, not just the frame of the film that is them, but what was happening globally for Venus around the time of their birth. So for $40 we could do that, or for 33 we could do that with the great Mercury. Moves so fast that often astrologers move way too fast by Mercury in the chart, who is so crucial, for it is him, thrice great, who brought this sacred art. So Gary's going to talk to us about these planets, about Jupiter and Saturn and their dance. So we will go back to the vortex here in Bellatrix and gaze upon this Saturn alignment to Hunabku, the galactic center, as we hear the beautiful songs of water, and I say thank you very much.